We all fall. Some once, some 1,000 times. Sometimes you fall in public, sometimes you fall in silence. There are collapses that echo, and collapses only you can hear, the kind where the soul trips over itself and runs out of strength to get back up. While the world keeps spinning, you stand still, staring at the pieces of a life you used to recognize, with no idea where to begin. You wonder when the turn happened. Was it one bad choice, a loss, or the slow erosion of so many days spent trying to be strong? What you know is this: you are on the floor, directionless, drained, and the meaning has leaked out of everything. And yet, inside the emptiness, a spark refuses to die. A thin voice, hidden but stubborn, keeps whispering, "You can rise." It's not easy to hear it. Guilt muffles it. Fear tries to smother it, but it remains. It doesn't tell you to forget what happened or to pretend everything's fine. It tells you to keep breathing. Not everything is lost. Even if everyone else has moved on, God is still seated beside you on the ground. Because He's not only in temples and victories, He's also in the ruins, in the room where you cry, in the mind that is tired, in the heart that beats slowly but refuses to surrender. Starting from zero isn't going back. It's returning to the beginning, to the place where God reminds you who you are before the world told you who to be. So don't fear the ground. It isn't the end. It's the workshop where God repairs what pride broke. And though today you may not understand, this fall will be the exact point from which heaven begins to lift you. There are mornings where waking costs more than sleep. Not because you don't want to live, but because you don't know how to live without the version of you that's shattered. You look around and nothing fits. Plans unraveled, people drifted, strength departed. You whisper, "I can't do this." Yet the soul doesn't forget its design. You were created to rise. God never promised you wouldn't fall. He promised you wouldn't do it alone. He promised that when your knees hit the ground, His hand would be there, unseen but sure. You may not feel it now, but it's holding you. When pain swells, the mind fogs and the heart closes. You start believing your story is over. You conclude there's no redemption left. Hear this with absolute clarity. God does not write periods where you see a full stop. He writes, "Begin again." Sometimes losing everything is the only way to see what matters. When your hands are empty, the soul can finally receive. The ground, the place we fear, can be the birthplace of a new life, because there, pretense dies. No masks, only you and God. And in that sacred nakedness, He begins to rebuild. God doesn't rebuild from the unbroken. He starts with the shattered. He doesn't begin in applause. He begins in quiet. He doesn't hurry. He goes deep. What looks wasted becomes material in His hands. Every ruin, every error, every tear becomes a brick for the new thing He's raising. So when you feel you've reached the end, don't run, don't flee, don't despair. Be still, breathe. Say with the voice you have left, "Do something with this." He will. What you call an ending, He calls a beginning. Start from zero reads like a motivational slogan until you have to do it. In life, it feels like a cliff edge. Beginning again means admitting something ended, that you can't go back, that what used to work no longer does. The emptiness, the disorientation inside your own story can be terrifying. When the references vanish, the people or certainties that held you, the first visitor is fear. Fear of failing again, fear of not being enough, fear that everything you build will break. Without noticing, fear convinces you the floor is safer than trying to stand. But God did not design you to stay down. Movement is written in your spiritual DNA. Every time life knocks you over, heaven whispers inside you, "Try again." Not because you deny what happened, but because you believe there is still something worth building. Not because you're naive, but because you've learned that faith isn't denial of pain, it's walking through it. Fear has power, but not the last word. Faith doesn't erase fear, it redeems it, it gives it meaning, it turns it into fuel for growth. You begin to see that trembling and uncertainty aren't proof of weakness. Often they're the prelude to a new chapter. No one begins certain. Not Abraham leaving his land, not Moses walking back into Egypt, not Peter stepping off the boat. They trembled and walked anyway. This is how rebirth happens. Trembling, you still step. You don't need a massive faith to start, you need a yes. God does the rest. He doesn't ask you to arrive knowing, only willing. In that first step, small, awkward, the miracle begins. Starting from zero isn't proof of failure, it's proof of courage. Only those who've lost something know the worth of rebuilding, and when you rebuild with God, every brick becomes a promise. When you look backward, all you see at first are ruins. Fragments of who you were, what you dreamed, whom you loved. Of course it hurts. Ruins speak. They remind you of decisions gone wrong, plans unfulfilled, people who didn't stay. But what looks like rubble to you is foundation to God. He never builds on the superficial. When something collapses, it isn't cruelty, it's mercy. Because it was standing on what could never hold you. Sometimes you build on approval. When it's taken away, everything falls. Sometimes you build on control. When life shows you you're not in charge, that too collapses. When nothing remains, when you feel empty, He comes and lays a foundation on what cannot be shaken. Ruins are the most fertile ground for true beginnings. Pride is gone there, masks gone, pretension gone. Only a bare soul before God, saying, do something with this, and there, exactly there, He smiles. It's what He always wanted, room to move. In Scripture, every miracle is preceded by a ruin. Before resurrection, a tomb. Before the Exodus, a desert. Before promise, a loss. God doesn't sidestep endings, He transforms them. What the world calls failure, He calls preparation. What you call loss, He uses as footing. Let Him work, and something begins to stir, slowly, deeply, as if He set His hands on your dust and breathed again. Faith starts to pulse, hope rises. Your soul remembers it was made for building, not for living among ruins. So this is starting from zero, not denying what broke, but giving it to God to use. Because surrendered ruins become the soil where the impossible blooms. We want everything to change at once. A sudden miracle, an instant answer, a spectacular sign. Rebirth rarely arrives that way. God doesn't rebuild in a rush. He rebuilds on purpose. He almost always starts with something so small you could miss it. A simple decision. Get up early. Pray again, smile through the ache, forgive yourself for what you didn't know. A conversation, a word, a flicker of an idea with no clear origin. That almost invisible, that's the beginning of your resurrection. With God, the great begins in the small. Seeds don't make noise when they split the soil. Dawn doesn't shout when it defeats the night. That's how God works, silently, steadily. He isn't asking you to sprint, only to move, not perfection, willingness. When you choose to begin, even before results, heaven celebrates. The hardest part isn't progress, it's believing you still can. Believing your story isn't over, that beauty can grow from what looked dead. That instant, the decision to rise again, is more powerful than you know. Who dares despise the day of small beginnings? Says the prophet. Those who know God refuse to despise them. In His hands, sparks become flame, tears become rivers, sighs become prayers. What starts small with Him ends eternal. So don't underestimate starting over, even if you shake. If today you can take only one step, take it. If all you can whisper is help, that's enough. Every move toward life He multiplies. Every small act of faith becomes a seed in His garden. In His time, it will bloom. One of our deepest wounds isn't failure, it's abandonment. The feeling that everyone tired of you, your attempts, your stumbles, that you no longer inspire trust. Nothing aches like looking around and realizing you're alone in the reconstruction. Understand this. God doesn't need a crowd to raise you. Sometimes he clears the room so you learn his voice is enough. You don't need human validation when you have divine purpose. When no one believes, he often begins his truest work. Consider Joseph, sold by brothers, forgotten in prison. No one bet on him. The silence of his confinement was the workshop where God prepared a governor. Consider David, overlooked by his family, ignored when a king was sought, chosen by heaven anyway. Loneliness isn't punishment, it is training. God uses it to cleanse motives and purify faith. Without applause, you learn to walk by conviction, not by recognition. Without eyes on you, you learn to do it for him alone. Free from the addiction to approval, you discover a freedom the world can't give. To be yourself, scars and hope and all. God loves using what the world discards. He chooses the broken to show he restores. He chooses the weak to shame the strong. He chooses the small to fell the big. So don't despair if no one believes in you. They're not rejecting you, they're releasing you. When your rising comes, everyone will know it wasn't luck nor talent. It was grace. You'll realize you were never alone, only held in exclusive hands. There's a voice in you that doesn't go out, though life's noise covered it for a while. God speaks there from the depths. He doesn't shout, demand, or threaten. He whispers with the force of an earthquake. It's the voice that called you into being, that said, "Let there be light," over chaos. Now it says, "Rise," not as a command to perform, but as an invitation to remember. You weren't made to crawl through rubble. You were made to walk over it and build. God's voice doesn't condemn your fall. It celebrates your will to stand. When you hear it, everything changes. Guilt grows quiet. The past's echo fades. Tomorrow's fear loosens. You remember you are not your error, not your loss, not your failures. You are a son, a daughter, beloved. Love does not expire. The enemy wants you convinced you are too broken, too late, too far. God never speaks that way. He says, "I still want you. I still call you. I still have something for you." His voice isn't contingent on your state. It reaches you kneeling or sprawled, because his love doesn't negotiate conditions. To hear him, you need silence. Not the silence of defeat, but surrender. The prayer that says, "God, I don't know how to do this anymore. If you want to raise me, here I am." Then something unexplainable happens. Not everything outside changes, but something inside does. A peace you can't trace, a strength you didn't request, a gentle push forward. It's the voice that raises the dead, straightens the path, reignites the heart. Listen, it isn't far. It sounds from within. Each time you choose it, a part of you comes back to life. When you decide to rise, your past pulls like a shadow. It recites your errors, collapses, broken promises. You tried before. You'll fail again, it hisses, to tie you to the floor. Fear is normal. Rising isn't only physical, it's spiritual war. The past doesn't fade by willpower, it heals by truth. Truth is often uncomfortable. It says, yes, you failed, it hurt, there were wrong turns. But truth adds what the enemy hides. You are not your history. You are what you do with it now. God doesn't define you by your file. He looks at your willingness to change. The future, by contrast, doesn't shout. It waits, arms open. To reach it, you must release the weight of yesterday. You can't walk forward while staring backward. Lot's wife didn't lose herself by glancing. She lost herself by not letting go. Some things won't be recovered, and that's okay. God doesn't ask you to resurrect the dead. He asks you to bloom again. Rising isn't always quick movement. Sometimes it's standing still and declaring, "My past will not decide for me." Every step forward, however small, disarms the chains behind you. The past loses power the moment you stop feeding it with guilt. The future isn't a place, it's a posture. It's the choice to believe God can write differently, with the same ink. You may have erred 1,000 times. He still writes straight with crooked lines. Faith doesn't delete your story, it redeems it. So when yesterday whispers, "You can't," answer with the tomorrow God promises. The God who sat with you in the fall is the one who waits for you in the rising. Yesterday has no right to stop what heaven has decreed for tomorrow. Begin again, and you'll discover nothing goes perfectly. You'll stumble, doubt, contradict yourself, retreat, and still advance. Starting from zero isn't doing it flawlessly. It's doing it anyway. God doesn't demand perfection in your steps. He delights in every attempt born of the heart. We grew up thinking only the impeccable deserves love. God doesn't love outcomes. He loves processes. He doesn't stare at your errors with disappointment, but with tenderness. Each time you fail and try again, you're learning dependence, not on yourself, on Him. Think of Peter sinking after doubt. Jesus didn't scold him for little faith. He reached for him. Failure didn't cancel Peter's calling. It revealed his need. Your stumbles don't void your destiny. They form you to carry it. Grace doesn't pour on the perfect. It rests on the willing. It doesn't crown the never fallen. It fills the fallen who keep believing. Faith isn't best proven in smooth seasons. It's proven when you walk through chaos. Starting over with God is accepting you don't have all the answers, but you have a companion who never tires. If you fall 10 times, His hand reaches 11. Lose your way, and His love comes searching. Don't wait to have clarity. Faith isn't drawn up on blueprints, it's built in dust. Where you see a road of missteps, God sees a heart that won't quit. That's grace. Even your clumsy beginnings can be holy if you take them with Him. When you begin again, fear disguises itself as prudence. Don't hurry, don't hope, don't trust. It wants to protect you, but it cages you instead. Fear doesn't prevent falls, it prevents flight. It doesn't stop pain, it stops life. God didn't rescue you to live half alive. Walking without fear doesn't mean never feeling it. It means not letting it choose for you. Fear alerts, faith interprets. Without faith, fear rules. With faith, fear becomes a guidepost. Trembling doesn't cancel the step. Walking with fear is still walking. Every time you move anyway, heaven rejoices. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's advancing in spite of it. Moses trembled before Pharaoh. Jeremiah doubted his voice. Mary feared the mystery. Each still stepped, and God did the rest. That's how grace operates. You move a little, He moves mountains. God isn't asking heroics. He's asking childlike trust, not because everything is certain, but because of who walks with you. Fear retreats when you remember you're not alone. One day you'll look back and see the monsters you feared are far behind. Storms that once shook you have become your testimony. Where you used to quake, you'll steady others. Walking without fear isn't ignorance of risk, it's remembrance of promise. It doesn't deny darkness, it chooses to look at light. Each step taken in faith amid fear becomes worship. Between fear and hope, the soul learns its most beautiful dance, trust. Some things keep you down not because they're heavy, but because you won't release them. Resentment, shame, disappointment, self-blame, they cling like chains. And though you try to move, something yanks you back. One day you learn, you can't begin anew without forgiveness. Sometimes forgiveness isn't for others, it's for you. Some of your deepest wounds come from what you accuse yourself of in secret. If only I hadn't said that. If only I hadn't lost it. If I'd been stronger. But self-punishment heals nothing. It prolongs the injury. God isn't asking you to punish yourself. He's asking you to be free. On the cross, Jesus didn't only offer forgiveness, He modeled it. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. Sometimes that sentence is for you too. Forgive those who hurt you without grasping the weight. Forgive yourself for the choices you made while trying to survive with the tools you had. Forgiveness doesn't justify, it releases. It says, "This hurt me, but it won't govern my future." It doesn't edit the past, it severs its hold. It grants freedom. And freedom is the land where new life grows. God can't fill a heart sealed by bitterness. Open that space, however it aches, and light comes in. That light begins to heal where human words cannot. Forgiveness is a key. It opens the soul for the spirit to enter. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's the bravest choice. The one who forgives is the one who is free, and the free can rise. Don't rush it. Pray, weep, release. One day, quietly, you'll notice it doesn't hurt the same. You'll understand forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for you. Moving forward doesn't always look like hope. Sometimes it's simply not stopping, getting up without motivation, doing the right thing when you feel nothing, believing with a tired heart. This quiet, persistent faith delights God. It isn't driven by emotion, but by love. There will be days without results. You'll pray and heaven will sound shut, work and no one will see. Try to change and feel stuck. Invisible doesn't mean absent, it means roots. Seeds take time to break ground. Delay isn't death. So your process. God is working in the unseen. As you wait, He forms something in you worth more than any win. Continuing through pain is warfare. It says to darkness, you will not win. It chooses faith over fear, endurance over ease. Every step, however small, is a declaration of victory. Each refusal to quit stirs heaven in your favor. Jesus didn't promise ease, He promised company. His presence won't always be felt, but it will always be there. That's enough. God's strength shows up not before exhaustion, but within it. When you hit your limit and take one more step, that's where the miracle begins. Don't condemn yourself for being tired. Weakness doesn't disqualify you. It's where God loves to demonstrate His power. Faith isn't walking without pain. It's walking with pain and still believing. You're not circling. You're crossing your desert toward promise. One day you'll look back and know this season was necessary. Every tear watered the ground where your purpose will bloom. Every "I can't anymore" was a truer prayer than 1,000 polished phrases. Real faith doesn't shine when everything's bright. It shines in the dark. And when you keep moving in that dark, you become a living witness of an eternal truth. Nothing and no one can stop the one carried by grace. Something miraculous happens along the way. One day, when you least expect it, you realize you are not alone. While you thought you were trudging through a desert, someone walked with you, step by step, even in your silence. You didn't see him because pain filled your field of vision, but he never left. God doesn't always arrive with spectacle. Often he hides in small things. A sudden peace that settles your heart. A person who appears precisely when needed. A sentence that pierces as if heaven spoke directly. They're flashes of his company, signs his promise stands. There were nights you cried believing no one heard, but every tear was seen. Days when you doubted everything. Yet your very breath was proof of his patience. He didn't leave when you fell. He knelt beside you. He didn't back away when you failed. He waited. When you lost your faith, he believed for you. This shifts how you read your story. You realize you weren't holding faith. Faith held you. Even when you felt you were drowning, a hand under the water kept you from sinking. That hand is still there. A new strength arrives. Quieter, truer. You no longer need to prove, you can rest. You no longer need to understand, you can trust. If God stayed through your darkest days, how will he not stay through what comes next? You are not alone. You never were. The loneliness you felt was the prelude to recognition. Now that you see it, faith stops being a fight and becomes a calm certainty. He is here, even when I don't feel him. There's something holy about starting again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you choose to believe again. After pain, that choice is already a miracle. Starting over isn't erasing the past. It's looking from a new angle. It's saying, yes, I fell. Yes, it hurt, but I'm still here, and I can build something beautiful with what remains. The beauty of beginnings is that they don't require clarity, only honesty. God isn't hunting experts. He's calling willing hearts. He makes great things with people who simply say, "Here I am." There is no mistake too large, no fall too deep to stop a God who turns ruin into purpose. Beginning again now isn't fueled only by faith, but by experience. You know the cost, but you also know the worth. You no longer build from innocence, but from wisdom. You don't chase easy, you seek meaning, and you discover a profound truth. Endings don't exist, only stages. Every loss prepared a new start. Every closed door was divine redirection. Every fall gave you the ground you needed to look up. God specializes in new beginnings. He's the one who spoke light into chaos, who called Lazarus from a tomb, who turns every winter into spring. If he did it with the universe, why not with you? Starting over isn't going backward, it's being reborn. Not beginning from nothing, but from what you've learned. In his hand, what once destroyed you becomes part of your construction. So don't fear being a beginner again. In the right hands, even broken pieces become art, and you, whether you see it or not, are being sculpted with love by the Creator who makes all things new. You've come this far, you've fallen, cried, doubted, and you're still breathing. That means one thing: God isn't done. What looked like ruin became root. What hurt now teaches. What held you back now propels you. Life didn't end where you thought. It's beginning again from a truer, deeper place. Rising isn't pride, it's faith. It's telling heaven, "I don't understand, but I trust." It's facing the mirror and admitting that even if your eyes don't shine the same, something alive remains. Hope. Hope doesn't die. It hides under ash until someone breathes. And God always breathes. He doesn't tire of you. He hasn't given up. He doesn't look at you with disappointment. He looks with tenderness. While you wonder if there's still a chance, he whispers, "There always was." It doesn't matter what you lost, how long it took, or how often you failed. If there is breath, there is purpose. Rising doesn't mean you never fell, only that you refuse to stay down. It is choosing life again, though it hurts, though you tremble, though the world won't understand. Rising after a fall is worship in its purest form. It declares that God's love outweighs the past, guilt and fear. And when you take that step, the first after dark, heaven moves, angels celebrate. God's heart is stirred. In your rebirth, his power reflects. In your weakness, his glory shines. So rise, not because you are strong, but because he holds you. Not because you see clearly, but because you trust the one who sees. Not because you've earned it, but because you are loved. Your story isn't over. The best has just begun. The dust where you fell has become the ground where God will make you bloom. And as you walk again, with scars, yes, and with faith, you'll know this chapter wasn't your end, it was your resurrection, because those who trust the love of God can always rise.